you also talked about loving oneself and belonging to oneself. I think that our field particularly oftentimes attracts people who themselves are disempowered as staff. And because of that disempowerment, they often will exert power over other people that they're working with. And it can become frustrating for people who really have community building at the heart of their work, to sort of, I feel like they're constantly butting up against this power dynamic. And so are there things that we can do as people who ultimately want to support belonging in people's lives to address some of what we see and some of the injustice that we see on a day-to-day basis, whether it be somebody telling somebody that they support to, sit on their hands, or that they can't eat certain foods, or, those things that we see every single day of our lives.
I think it's the right people in the right place, because there's an opportunity for healing there.
Interesting.
We know that power used not in a good way only comes from one root: somebody using power with that person in a not good way. That we carry the stories of how to use power from how power has been used with us. And so, for instance, I'm just making this up, but if my dad was really controlling and I get a job in disabilities, I'm going to find myself doing a lot of controlling behaviors. Sit on your hands, don't do that. If I've been told I'm not good enough when I'm growing up, my tendency when I'm job coaching is to look at somebody I'm coaching and say, why can't you do that? It's really simple. Right? And so my answer to your question is that people who choose lives of service often try and find healing for themselves through serving others. And that's when you begin to use power illegitimately. That there's two tracks for somebody in service: doing your own healing work and helping the people that you're supporting heal. And people who won't do their own work, I don't trust, because I know as soon as I turn around, they're doing control and power over behaviors with the people that they're supporting. I'm not saying everybody who chooses a life of service needs to go to a therapist. What I'm saying is that people need to recognize that the root of their desire to serve comes from their own not belonging stories.
Interesting.
The root of your desire to serve comes from your own stories of not belonging.
So when people say, because the answer that people give frequently, myself included, likely at many parts of my life, is, why do you do this work? The answer is because they want to help people. But what I'm hearing is that's not the case.
That's not a person to hire. I would never hire anybody if that was their answer in an interview, because I know that they haven't. That's not true. I might hire them if in other parts of the interview, I can see that they're interested in self-growth.
Yeah.
And they don't understand that particular part of self-growth yet. But somebody who says, I like to help other people, still believes that they can heal themselves through a life of service. And the only way to get right with yourself is to focus on yourself. It's not to focus on other people. I don't care what healing paradigm you pick, what spiritual paradigm you pick, all of them say the same thing: do your own work. Don't try and heal by serving other people. And so I think there's a threshold that you cross when you choose a life of service, where you have that aha moment. I'm very clear. When I didn't understand this for the first few years when I worked in this disability organization. I was really sick when I was in 10th grade. My guts were bleeding. I had a bunch of different operations. I was on the couch for most of a school year, and I lost all my friends and felt really isolated and alone. And when I went back to school that spring, My friends didn't seem very interested in being around me. It was a very serious time in my own life. And I moved on. I graduated from high school and went to college and went to Alaska. I had a great life. But when I started volunteering in that disability organization I mentioned, and then I became, for a bunch of reasons, I became the director not long after I started volunteering. I was in my office, and it was right next to the front door where everyone was coming and going. All these people looking for support were coming and going. And I had this experience of waking up with my head on my desk, not being aware that I'd fallen asleep. I thought I had brain cancer. I thought I had narcolepsy. I flew down to Seattle and got checked out by a bunch of different doctors. No one could figure out what was wrong with me. And finally, a brain and neural doctor looked at me and said, we can't find anything medically wrong with you. You might think about going to a therapist. And I remember laughing in that person's face, actually laughing. And I went back home, and I had a friend who was a therapist. And I said, can we talk about this for a minute? It wasn't even like an official visit. It took her like less than 10 minutes to figure out why I was falling asleep. It was because those people walking through the doors that I'd seen, I knew were being marginalized. I knew were being hidden away from our community by working in the hospital and in their group homes. They were triggering my own story of not belonging in high school. And my brain was saying, don't go there, Bruce, go to sleep. Literally, I was turning my body off so I wouldn't have to remember that.
That's really, really interesting.
Yeah. And as soon as I was able to understand that my connection to the people that we were serving was not that I had a better life and I wanted them to have one too. The real connection was that I knew exactly what it was like to feel like I didn't belong. And as soon as I recognized that, I started treating people differently that came in the door looking for service. I started getting energy. I started realizing I was healing myself, my own stories of not belonging. Everything changed when I realized that.
I anticipate this being a little bit of a hot topic in our conversation with students afterwards, because I think that, I do believe that most people who do good work in helping roles, there is some desire to want to help other people. And so how do you differentiate whether somebody is coming from a place of themselves being wounded and not healed and wanting to heal through help, and being at a place where they've worked through some of those things and now can be more effective helpers?
It is a great thing to be in service to other humans. It is a great calling to have. That's half of it.
Okay.
The other half is recognizing the root of your desire to do that. That's what I'm saying. And recognizing that your desire to help is rooted in your own stories of times when you felt like you haven't belonged, which everyone has, gives you a tremendous amount of power to do your work, and you get healed.